Good Monday morning and welcome to Begin in the Word. Today we're going to commence a study of the book of Job, and we're going to study the book of Job with particular attention to the question of human suffering. In this morning's study, we're going to look at the things that Job lost or the grief that he endured. In Job 1 and verse 1, he introduces us to the main character of the book of Job. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned evil. This is a key verse in the book of Job, not just because it tells us who Job was and where he was from, but it tells us that he feared God and that he shunned or avoided evil. The narrative here portrays him as a man who was blameless and upright. That's not to say that Job was perfect or that he had done no wrong whatsoever, but he was a faithful servant of God. And we find that God himself characterizes or portrays Job as such. Continuing in this reading from Job chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Here, when God speaks, he speaks of Job as his servant. And he describes him the way the narrative had earlier described him, a blameless and an upright man. Job was about to endure a lot of terrible suffering, but it wasn't because he had done some great evil and deserved, therefore, some special punishment from God. But Satan brought accusation against Job and against God. He said to the Lord that you built a hedge around Job. He's basically saying the only reason that Job serves you is because you brought blessings to him or you blessed the work of his hands. Satan is essentially saying, God, you're not worthy to be worshiped just because you're the creator and worthy of such things. Men will only worship you if you bribe them with gifts. And Satan is accusing man. Man is incapable of realizing that God is his creator and worthy to be worshiped and praised just because of who he is. Man is so shallow that he'll only worship God if he receives gifts directly from God's hand. And with those accusations, the Lord allowed Satan to afflict Job. So where do we find Satan? Well, God said, "Where do you come from?" And Satan said, "I've been going to and fro back on the forth on the earth." That's just what First Peter says about Satan. He's going about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And what does the Lord do in response to that? The Lord places limitations on Satan. He said, "Satan, you can afflict Job with problems in his life, but you can't lay a hand on his person." This reminds us of the New Testament teaching in 1 Corinthians that God does not allow his children to be tempted more than we're able to bear. So God allows suffering and problems and temptations to come into Job's life. Why? To exonerate God, to show that he's worthy of being worshiped because he is our creator, and to demonstrate that Job's godliness was authentic and real. That he wasn't just serving God for shallow reasons because God bribed him with gifts. He was serving God because Job was capable of realizing that God is our creator and worthy to be worshiped. Moving further into chapter 1 of Job, we now see the rapid succession of suffering and calamity that Satan brought against Job. Job 1 now, verse 13 through 19. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them when the Sabaean raided them and took them away, and they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels and took them away, yes, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another also came and said, your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Behold, Satan's cruel hate that he has for Job, and the willingness to bring such rapid succession of such terrible calamity. Job here experienced financial collapse and family collapse all in one cruel moment. The Sabaean raiders had come and taken away many of Job's animals, beasts of burden that served his enterprise. And not only did they take them, but they killed Job's servants. And then along comes something that's described as the fire of God burning up the sheep and the servants there, losing more livestock and more servants. And then the Chaldean raiders came, and with 3 bands they attacked, and they took all of the camels there, and then they also killed Job's servants with the edge of the sword. So in rapid succession, one calamity after another befell Job. Because God was mad at him? No. Because he had done something terrible to deserve all this punishment? No. Because he was a faithful servant of God, and Satan hated that and wanted to change that. But as if those problems weren't enough, following financial collapse came, no doubt, what was worst of all of Job's children together in one house at one time, and a storm come, destroying the home and killing them all. How did Job respond to all this terrible news? He responded in a way that honored God and proved Satan wrong. In Job 1, verse 20 and 22, it says, Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, he fell to the ground and worshiped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. Job's response to all of these losses is he worshiped God. Job's response, he blessed the name of the Lord. Job's response, though he was hurting, though he grieved in the manner consistent with his culture, he did not charge God with wrong. Job did exactly what Satan said he would not do. He stayed true and faithful to God. And in this faithfulness, Job demonstrated that God is worthy to be worshiped just because of who he is, our great and mighty creator. And he demonstrated that man is capable of understanding that about God and choosing to do the right thing. Job proved that his faith was authentic. Of course, Satan was not happy with that, and he pressed for more. He asked God, let me at him and let me afflict his health. And that all happened in Job chapter 2. And so God granted Satan leave that he would allow Satan to afflict Job with bad health. The Bible says, so Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Incredibly, after God allowed Satan to afflict Job's health with painful boils, Job still remained faithful. He still was true to God. Even his wife turned against him and said, "Curse God and die." How hard that must have been for your life companion and one that you have built a family with to turn on you and urge you to curse God and die. It must have been a very sorrowful moment for Job. But Job's response showed great understanding. We can accept good from God, but we also must accept adversity. Job understood that he did not deserve all the great blessings that God had given him. And so there was no wrong on God's part for those blessings to be taken away. Let me put the question to you this way. Had Job done anything that forced God and morally obligated God to bless him so with such a great family and such great wealth? No. As we see later in the book, Job made mistakes. Though he was a godly man, he at times in his life had done things wrong. And the wages of sin is death. Job hadn't earned all these great blessings from God. They were free gifts from God's tender hand. And it was not wrong for God to give them, nor was it wrong for God to allow them to be removed. Job understood this, and so he did not sin with his lips. He stayed true and faithful to God. When we endure grief and suffering in life, we do well to remember that whatever blessings we have are not things that we've earned by being so good that we force God to treat us well. They're blessings from His kind hand. And if we lose those blessings, if we suffer some grief, we've got to accept that adversity and do like Job did and turn and worship God for the good things that He is and the good things that He does, because He is our Creator and in hope of that eternal reward. I hope that this study helps you today and that these reminders from God's Word help us to deal with grief and human suffering in our lives. I hope as we've begun today in the Word that you'll live out today in the Word. Thank you, and God bless.